Sign your name, Claire. After today, you won't have to pretend this marriage still exists." Nathan Caldwell's voice was calm, almost gentle, and that was what hurt the most. Claire Morgan sat across from her husband of 10 years, staring at the divorce papers placed neatly between them on the polished wooden table. There was no anger in his eyes, no regret, no hesitation, just the quiet confidence of a man who believed he had already won. She looked down at the signature line and felt a strange emptiness settle in her chest. For years, she had signed papers for Nathan, partnership agreements, financial documents, contracts that helped turn his small technology company into Vantage Horizon Technologies, a name now recognized across the country. She had stood beside him when his office was nothing more than a rented room with 2 employees and a dream. She had believed they were building something together. But now, the final paper she would sign for him was the one that ended everything. "Are you sure this is what you want?" Claire asked quietly. Nathan leaned back in his chair. "Claire, we both know this is the right decision." The words sounded rehearsed, like something he had practiced before walking into the room. "The company is growing. My responsibilities are different now. My life is different now." Claire looked at him for a moment. The man sitting across from her was familiar, but somehow a stranger. "Your life is different," she repeated softly. Nathan avoided her eyes for a second. That small movement told her more than any explanation could. He had already moved on emotionally long before today. His family had made sure of that. Over the past year, Claire had watched people she once trusted slowly disappear from Nathan's company. Old advisors were replaced. Loyal employees were pushed aside. New executives with connections to the Caldwell family suddenly appeared in important positions. Everyone called it business. Everyone told her not to worry. But Claire noticed everything. She always had. "You're not even going to fight?" Nathan finally asked. There was a hint of surprise in his voice, as if he expected tears, arguments, or a desperate attempt to hold on. Claire looked at the papers again. 10 years of memories reduced to a few pages and a signature. "Would you stay if I asked you to?" she asked. Nathan said nothing, and that silence answered everything. Claire picked up the pen. Her hand was steady, even though her heart was not. She signed her name slowly. Nathan exhaled, almost relieved. He gathered the documents and stood up. "I hope you find what you're looking for." Claire watched him walk toward the door. The man who once promised forever was leaving as if he had simply finished a business meeting. He never noticed the small detail sitting beside Claire's phone. A message notification from a number saved under one word, "Dad." Claire looked at the screen for a moment, then pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, then a familiar voice answered. "Claire," her father asked. She closed her eyes and took a breath. "Dad, it's time." On the other end of the line, there was a brief silence. Then Richard Morgan asked the question she had been waiting years to hear. "Do you want me to remove them?" Claire looked through the glass wall of the office at the city Nathan believed belonged to him. Her voice remained calm. "Everyone my ex-husband's family planted." She ended the call without another word, because Nathan Caldwell thought he had just erased her from his life. He had no idea he had just given her permission to take back everything he never knew was hers. The morning after Claire Morgan walked out of the divorce meeting, Nathan Caldwell arrived at Vantage Horizon Technologies with the confidence of a man who believed the hardest part of his life was finally behind him. The glass doors opened, the executives greeted him, and the employees who passed by nodded respectfully. To everyone watching from the outside, Nathan looked like a man who had successfully removed every obstacle standing between him and the future he wanted. But inside the company he had spent years building, something had already begun to shift. "The divorce is finalized," Nathan told his mother, Victoria Caldwell, during a private meeting on the top floor. She smiled as she looked over the updated company reports. "Good. Now we can finally move forward without her influence." Nathan leaned back in his chair. Claire was never really interested in business. Victoria gave a small laugh. "Exactly. She was a wife, not a strategist." Those words would have bothered Claire once. Years ago, they would have stayed with her all night. But Claire was no longer standing in the middle of that conversation. She was somewhere else entirely, sitting quietly in a small coffee shop across town, watching the city move around her. For the first time in years, she had no schedule built around Nathan's meetings. No dinner waiting for someone who might not come home. No pressure to make herself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. But freedom did not erase the memories. Claire remembered the beginning. She remembered Nathan before the expensive office, before the private meetings, before his name appeared in business magazines. Back then, he was just a young entrepreneur with a laptop, a borrowed office space, and a dream that seemed impossible. She believed in him when almost no one else did. "You really think this idea can work?" she had asked him years earlier, looking at the first presentation he created. Nathan had smiled. "Not everyone will understand it. But you do." Those words were the reason she stayed. She helped him organize the early business plans. She reviewed documents late at night. She handled the details he ignored while he focused on becoming the face of the company. Claire never needed recognition. She thought they were partners. But success slowly changed the way Nathan saw the world. The same qualities he once admired became things he overlooked. Her patience became something he expected. Her support became something he assumed would always be there. And when his family began taking a larger role in the company, Claire noticed the difference immediately. "You should let the Caldwell team handle these decisions," Nathan told her one evening. "They understand the business world better." Claire had looked at him carefully. "Your family did not build this company with you." Nathan's expression hardened. "Maybe that is the problem. You still think this is our little project." That sentence stayed with her longer than she wanted to admit. Because in that moment, Claire realized Nathan had already separated himself from the life they created together. He no longer saw her as the person who stood beside him. He saw her as someone standing in his way. What Nathan never understood was that Claire had never been powerless. She had simply chosen a quiet life over a powerful one. She had hidden her connection to Arden Capital Group because she wanted to know if someone could love Claire Morgan without knowing she was the daughter of Richard Morgan, one of the most respected investors in the country. Now, after everything that happened, she finally understood the truth. Nathan did not leave because she had nothing to offer. He left because he never bothered to discover what she truly was. And while he celebrated removing her from his world, the first reports from Sterling Peak Capital were already being prepared. Reports that would reveal exactly who had been placed inside his company and why. While Claire Morgan was quietly rebuilding the life she had almost forgotten, Nathan Caldwell was busy celebrating what he believed was his greatest victory. The Caldwell family gathered that evening inside Nathan's private office, a room filled with awards, company photos, and reminders of how far he had come. To them, Claire's departure was not a loss. It was a cleanup. "This is the perfect time to make changes," Victoria Caldwell said as she placed a folder on the desk. "The company needs people who understand loyalty." Nathan opened the folder and looked through the names inside. Several new executives had already been approved. People connected to the Caldwell family. People who would answer to them before they answered to the company. "Once the board sees the new structure, nobody will question our direction," Victoria continued. Nathan nodded. He believed he was protecting his future. He believed Claire had been holding him back. What he did not realize was that the people he trusted most were quietly taking control of the very company he thought he owned. Across town, Claire sat in a quiet conference room at Sterling Peak Capital with a stack of documents in front of her. She had not returned to the company because she wanted revenge. She returned because she needed answers. Richard Morgan sat across from his daughter, watching her carefully. "Are you sure you want to open this door?" he asked. Claire looked down at the reports. "I spent 10 years pretending this part of my life did not exist. I cannot pretend anymore." Her father nodded. He had respected her decision to live simply. When Claire chose to marry Nathan, she asked him for one thing. She wanted to be treated like an ordinary person, not as the daughter of Richard Morgan, not as the future leader of a financial empire. Just Claire. "I wanted to know if someone could love me without knowing what I had," she said quietly. Richard understood. "And now you know." Claire did not answer immediately, because the truth was complicated. She did not hate Nathan. That would have been easier. She still remembered the man who once stayed up all night with her during the early days of his company. The man who promised they would build a future together. But that person had slowly disappeared behind ambition, pride, and the need to prove himself. Richard opened the first report. "These are the people your former husband brought into his company during the last 18 months. Claire studied the names. She recognized some of them. Executives who had suddenly gained influence. Advisors who had pushed aside longtime employees. Consultants who appeared shortly after Victoria Caldwell started attending company meetings. They were not hired because of talent, Richard said. They were placed there because they had family connections. Claire remained silent as she turned each page. The pattern became clearer. Her divorce was not just about a broken marriage. It was connected to a much bigger plan. Nathan's family wanted full control of Vantage Horizon Technologies, and Claire's absence made their plan easier. They thought removing me removed the problem, Claire finally said. Richard looked at her. What will you do? Claire closed the folder. For the first time in a long time, she felt completely certain. I am not going to destroy Nathan's company. Her father raised an eyebrow. No. Claire shook her head. I am going to protect what was built honestly and remove the people who try to take it. The next morning, a confidential report arrived at Sterling Peak Capital. It contained everything they needed. Names, positions, connections, a complete map of the people the Caldwell family had quietly placed inside Vantage Horizon Technologies. And for the first time since the divorce, Claire realized something important. She had not lost her place in Nathan's world. She had simply stepped away long enough to see who was trying to steal it. The next morning, Nathan Caldwell walked into the Vantage Horizon Technologies boardroom, believing he was about to secure his future. The room was filled with executives, investors, and members of the Caldwell family who had spent months positioning themselves closer to the company's most important decisions. Nathan stood at the head of the table, confident and composed. Today is about stability, he said. We are building a stronger leadership structure for the next phase of growth. Around the table, several people nodded. Nathan believed the room belonged to him. He believed Claire Morgan was already a closed chapter. But before the meeting could begin, his assistant quietly entered and placed a sealed envelope beside him. This arrived from Sterling Peak Capital this morning, she said. Nathan looked at the envelope and frowned. Sterling Peak. The name immediately changed the atmosphere in the room. Victoria Caldwell noticed it too. Why would they be contacting us? She asked. Nathan opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a formal notice requesting a review of several recent executive appointments and financial decisions made within Vantage Horizon Technologies. His expression tightened as he continued reading. This is just a misunderstanding, he said. Someone is overstepping. But the room had already changed. For the first time in weeks, Nathan was no longer the person with all the answers. Later that afternoon, Nathan went directly to his mother's office. Did you know about this? He asked, placing the documents on her desk. Victoria looked through them carefully. Her confidence faded slightly. Sterling Peak does not make moves without a reason. Nathan stared at her. What does that mean? She hesitated before answering. It means we need to find out who is behind this. Across the city, Claire sat beside Richard Morgan reviewing the same information. She was not celebrating. She was not enjoying Nathan's discomfort. Instead, she was focused on something much bigger. If we move too quickly, they will know exactly what we are doing, Claire said. Richard nodded. That is why you are different from them. They react emotionally. You think ahead. Claire looked at the company records again. She noticed something unusual. One name appeared repeatedly across different departments. A consultant who had helped approve several questionable decisions. Someone who had gained access far beyond their official position. This person was never supposed to have that level of authority, Claire said. Richard leaned closer. Then we find out who gave it to them. Meanwhile, Nathan started searching for answers inside his own company. He called executives he thought he could trust, but their responses were careful and distant. Nobody wanted to admit they had seen the warning signs. Nobody wanted to be the first person to say the Caldwell family had made a mistake. For the first time, Nathan experienced what Claire had felt for months. The feeling of standing in a room where everyone knew something you did not. That evening, Nathan returned to the apartment he once shared with Claire. The place looked different without her. Not empty because of missing furniture, but empty because the person who gave it meaning was gone. On the kitchen counter, he found an old photo from their early years together. It showed two people who believed they were building the same future. Nathan stared at it longer than he expected. Then his phone rang. It was one of the company executives. Nathan, you need to come back to the office, the man said quietly. There is something you need to see. Minutes later, Nathan arrived at Vantage Horizon and walked into the conference room. A large screen displayed a detailed report. Names, connections, internal movements. At the top of the document was a title that made his entire expression change. Caldwell Family Influence Network. Nathan looked around the room, confused. Who created this? Nobody answered immediately. Then the screen updated with one final line. Prepared by Claire Morgan. And in that moment, Nathan realized the woman he thought he had removed from his life had been watching everything from the beginning. She had not disappeared. She had been preparing. The room went silent after Claire Morgan's name appeared on the screen. Nathan Caldwell stood at the center of the conference room, staring at the report in front of him as if the words might change if he looked at them long enough. For months, he believed Claire had walked away defeated. He believed she had signed the papers because she had nothing left to fight for. But now her name was attached to the one document exposing everything happening inside his company. "This is impossible," Nathan finally said. "Claire does not have access to these files." One of the executives lowered his eyes. "Actually, Mr. Caldwell, she does." Nathan turned toward him. "What are you talking about?" The executive carefully opened another file. "Your former wife has legal authority connected to several investment agreements that helped establish the company years ago." The words landed differently than Nathan expected. He remembered Claire as the person who sat quietly beside him during late nights, the person who organized his notes and encouraged him when nobody believed in his ideas. He never imagined that behind that quiet support was someone with influence far beyond what he understood. But the bigger shock was not Claire's connection to the company. It was the information inside the report. Several people appointed by the Caldwell family had been involved in decisions that created serious financial concerns. They had moved resources, redirected contracts, and placed themselves in positions where they could control important parts of the business. Nathan looked at his mother. "You knew about this?" Victoria Caldwell remained quiet for a moment. That hesitation was enough. Nathan's expression changed. "Mom," Victoria finally answered, "we were trying to protect the family's future." "By taking control of my company?" Nathan asked. "By making sure your company stayed in the right hands," she replied. Nathan looked back at the documents. For the first time, he saw the situation differently. He had spent months believing Claire was the person standing between him and success. But now he wondered if the people closest to him had been using that belief against him. Meanwhile, Claire sat across from Richard Morgan reviewing the final steps. "The board meeting is tomorrow," Richard said. "Once the evidence is presented, they will have to answer for their actions." Claire remained quiet. "Are you worried?" her father asked. She looked at the documents in front of her. "I am not worried about winning." Richard waited for her to continue. "I am worried about realizing how long I ignored the truth." Those words revealed the part of the situation that hurt her most. It was not losing Nathan. It was accepting that she had spent years defending someone who had stopped seeing her value. But Claire was not returning to destroy him. She was returning because she refused to let dishonest people take control of something built through years of hard work. The next morning, the Vantage Horizon boardroom was filled with tension. Nathan entered with his legal team. Victoria arrived with her advisors. And then the doors opened. Claire Morgan walked in. She was calm, professional, and completely different from the woman Nathan thought he had left behind. Every conversation stopped. Nathan looked at her, searching for the person he remembered. "Claire," he said quietly, "what is this?" She placed a folder on the table. "A correction." The board members looked through the documents as Claire explained the timeline, the appointments, and the hidden connections. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody needed to. The facts spoke for themselves. Then the final document was placed in front of everyone. It revealed the one thing the Caldwell family never expected. Claire was not only connected to the company's foundation. She had the authority to remove every person who had been placed there without proper approval. Nathan stared at the paper, realizing the truth at the exact moment everyone else did. The woman he thought he had left behind was the only person with the power to decide what happened next. And before the meeting ended, Claire made one final statement that changed everything. "This is not about taking something away from anyone." She looked around the room. "This is about returning what was taken." The boardroom remained silent after Claire Morgan finished speaking. For the first time in years, Nathan Caldwell had no prepared answer. No confident explanation. No carefully chosen words that could turn the situation in his favor. The people around the table were no longer looking at him as the leader who had all the solutions. They were looking at him as someone who had missed what was happening inside his own company. Claire closed the folder in front of her and looked at the board members. "The people involved will have the opportunity to respond through the proper process," she said calmly. "This is not personal. This is about protecting the company and everyone who built it." Nathan watched her carefully. The woman standing in front of him was the same person he had been married to for 10 years. But she carried herself differently. She was not trying to prove anything. She was not asking anyone to believe her. She simply knew the truth. After the meeting ended, Nathan followed Claire into the hallway. Claire, wait. She stopped, but did not turn around immediately. What? Nathan struggled to find the right words. That alone surprised him. He had spent his entire career knowing exactly what to say. Why did you never tell me? He asked. Claire finally looked at him. Tell you what? About your family. About Arden Capital. About all of this. For a moment, Claire said nothing. Then she answered quietly. Because I wanted to know if you loved me when I had nothing to prove. Nathan looked away. That answer stayed with him because deep down, he knew exactly what she meant. When they met, Claire never mentioned her father's name. She never talked about private investments, family wealth, or the influence she had access to. She wanted a normal relationship. She wanted someone who saw her, not her last name. But Nathan had slowly started measuring people by what they could provide. And without realizing it, he had done the same thing to her. Later that day, Nathan returned to his office and found Victoria waiting for him. She looked less confident than before. You cannot let her take control, she said. Nathan looked at her. She is not taking control. She is fixing what we damaged. Victoria's expression changed. Be careful. You are starting to sound like her. Nathan looked out the window at the city below. For years, he believed Claire was too soft for the business world. Now he wondered if that was the reason she understood it better than he did. Meanwhile, Claire reviewed the final documents with Richard Morgan. Everything appeared clear until one last file appeared on the screen. Richard's expression changed. There is something else. Claire looked closer. The document showed that the Caldwell family had not only placed people inside Vantage Horizon, they had also been preparing a separate agreement that would transfer control of several company divisions if Nathan's leadership became unstable. Claire read the details carefully. Then she noticed something unexpected. Nathan's signature was not on the final agreement. He never approved this, she said. Richard nodded. No, someone moved without him. That changed everything. Nathan was responsible for his choices, but he might not have known the full extent of his family's plan. For the first time, Claire saw a different possibility. The person she thought betrayed her may have also been manipulated by the people closest to him. But before she could decide what that meant, her phone rang. It was one of the company's legal advisors. Claire, you need to see this immediately. Her expression changed as she listened. What happened? A long pause followed. Then the advisor answered. We found the person who authorized the first internal changes at Vantage Horizon, and it was not Victoria Caldwell. Claire looked at Richard. The room became quiet, because the one person they never suspected was about to change the entire story. The legal advisor's words stayed with Claire Morgan long after the phone call ended. The person who authorized the first internal changes at Vantage Horizon was not Victoria Caldwell. For a moment, Claire simply stared at the documents in front of her. The entire situation had been built around one assumption. Nathan's family was trying to take control of the company without him knowing the full plan. But now there was another possibility. Someone else had been moving pieces behind the scenes. Richard Morgan looked at his daughter carefully. Are you ready to find out who it is? Claire nodded. We need the truth, no matter who it leads to. The next morning, Claire, Richard, and the legal team reviewed every transaction connected to the company changes. They followed approval records, meeting schedules, and internal communications. Slowly, a pattern appeared. The person behind the first major changes was not a member of the Caldwell family. It was someone Nathan had personally trusted for years. Daniel Whitaker, the former chief strategy officer of Vantage Horizon Technologies. Daniel had been with Nathan from the early days of the company. He was the person Nathan called when he needed advice. He was the person Nathan believed would always protect his vision. When Claire saw his name, she understood why this had gone unnoticed. Nathan trusted him, she said. Richard nodded. More than anyone. Meanwhile, Nathan was sitting in his office reviewing the same information. The discovery hit him differently. For years, he believed he was surrounded by people who supported him. He believed Claire was the only person who had stopped understanding his ambition. But now he was looking at evidence that someone close to him had been making decisions without his knowledge. Daniel walked into Nathan's office that afternoon with the same calm confidence he always carried. I heard Sterling Peak is causing problems, Daniel said. Nathan looked at him. Why did you approve the first executive placements? Daniel paused. It was only a second, but Nathan noticed. Because someone had to make difficult decisions, Daniel replied. Nathan slowly stood up. That was not your decision to make. Daniel gave a small smile. Nathan, you are still thinking like the old version of yourself. This company became successful because people like me made moves you were not willing to make. Those words revealed something Nathan had not expected. Daniel did not see himself as someone who betrayed him. He saw himself as the person who deserved more power. Later that evening, Nathan met Claire outside the company building. It was the first time they had spoken privately since the board meeting. I owe you an apology, Nathan said. Claire remained quiet. I blamed you for everything that went wrong, he continued. But I never stopped to ask who was actually making the decisions around me. Claire looked at him. Nathan, understanding the truth does not erase what happened. He nodded. He knew she was right. The divorce, the way he dismissed her, the way he allowed his family to treat her, those choices were still his. But now there was another truth he had to face. Someone had used his pride against him. Before they could continue, Nathan's phone rang. It was an urgent message from his legal department. He read it once, then again. His expression changed. What is it? Claire asked. Nathan looked at the screen. Daniel just filed a claim saying he owns a percentage of the company. Claire's eyes narrowed. Based on what? Nathan handed her the phone. The document showed a hidden agreement created months before the divorce. An agreement that could give Daniel control over major parts of Vantage Horizon if Nathan lost leadership authority. Claire looked at the signature page. Then she noticed something impossible. The agreement had been prepared using information from before Nathan's divorce. Someone had been planning for his downfall long before anyone knew it was coming. And now Claire realized the divorce was not the beginning of the conflict. It was only the moment when the real plan finally started to reveal itself. The discovery of Daniel Whitaker's hidden agreement changed everything. For the first time in weeks, Nathan Caldwell understood that the battle around Vantage Horizon Technologies was much bigger than his divorce or his family's influence. Someone had been preparing for a takeover long before anyone realized there was a threat. The following morning, the emergency board meeting began earlier than expected. The atmosphere inside the room was completely different from before. Nathan was no longer sitting at the head of the table as the confident CEO who believed he controlled every outcome. This time, he was waiting for answers just like everyone else. Claire Morgan sat across from him with the legal team beside her. She noticed something she had not expected. Nathan looked tired, not defeated, but finally aware of the reality around him. The board members reviewed the documents connected to Daniel's claim. Every page revealed another layer of planning. The agreement was carefully designed to appear legitimate, but the details showed something different. Daniel had created a structure that would allow him to gain influence if Nathan's leadership became unstable. He was preparing for you to fail, one board member said. Nathan looked down at the table. The sentence was difficult to hear because a part of him knew it was true. Daniel had not simply taken advantage of a problem. He had been waiting for one. Claire studied the timeline carefully. Then she noticed something unusual. Wait, she said. Everyone looked toward her. She pointed to one section of the agreement. This document was created before the divorce discussion started. The room became quiet. Nathan looked confused. What does that mean? Claire continued. It means Daniel was not reacting to your divorce. He was expecting it. That realization changed the entire situation. The divorce that Nathan thought was his own decision had also created the perfect opening for someone else's plan. Daniel had counted on Nathan being distracted. He counted on the Caldwell family fighting for control. He counted on Claire disappearing. But Claire had not disappeared. She had been watching. After the meeting, Nathan found Claire outside the boardroom. You knew something was wrong before I did, he said. Claire looked at him. I noticed things were changing. Why did you not tell me? Nathan asked. Claire took a moment before answering. Because every time I tried, you told me I did not understand business anymore. Nathan had no response. He remembered those conversations. The moments when he dismissed her concerns. The times when he assumed she was simply being emotional. Now he realized those moments were not misunderstandings. They were warnings he chose to ignore. I was wrong, Nathan finally said. Claire looked at him. Yes, you were. Her answer was simple, but honest. There was no anger in her voice. That made it harder for him to accept. Later that day, Claire and Richard Morgan prepared the final legal steps. The plan was clear. They would remove the unauthorized individuals connected to Daniel's operation and protect the company's future. But before they could complete everything, another message arrived. The legal team had discovered one more hidden file. This time, it was not about Daniel. It was about Nathan. Claire opened the document carefully. Inside was an old agreement signed years earlier, during the earliest days of Vantage Horizon. It showed that Nathan had never actually owned as much of the company as he believed. A significant portion of the original foundation had been protected under a private investment agreement connected to Claire's family. Richard looked at his daughter. "There is something you need to decide." Claire understood immediately. She had the legal power to completely change the future of Vantage Horizon. She could remove Nathan. She could take full control. She could make him experience the same feeling of losing everything. But Claire looked at the document and closed the folder. "No," she said quietly. "I am not going to become the person who hurt me." At that moment, Nathan walked into the room and heard the final sentence. He stopped, because for the first time, he understood the biggest difference between them. He had used power to prove he was right. Claire had power and still chose fairness. But before anyone could say another word, the legal advisor entered with urgent news. "There is a problem," he said. "Daniel is not running anymore. He is preparing to expose a secret that could damage everyone involved. And whatever Daniel was about to reveal could change the way Nathan and Claire saw the past forever." Daniel Whitaker's final move was not what anyone expected. For weeks, he had carefully built his position inside Vantage Horizon Technologies, believing he could control the company once Nathan Caldwell lost his authority. But when the legal team reviewed the information he planned to release, they discovered something different. Daniel was not exposing a mistake. He was trying to protect himself. The documents showed that Daniel had created the hidden agreements, moved information between departments, and used the uncertainty inside the company to build his own path to control. His plan was not about saving Vantage Horizon. It was about owning it. When Daniel entered the final board meeting, he walked in with confidence. He expected fear. He expected people to negotiate. Instead, Claire Morgan was already there, sitting at the table with the complete record in front of her. Daniel looked around the room. "You think this changes everything?" he asked. Claire looked at him calmly. "No. The truth changes everything." Daniel tried to explain his decisions. He claimed he was protecting the company. He said Nathan was too distracted and Claire had too much influence. But every explanation revealed the same thing. He had underestimated everyone in the room, especially Claire. The board reviewed the evidence and reached its decision. Daniel would no longer have any authority within the company. The people connected to his plan would also be removed through the proper legal process. There was no celebration, no dramatic victory, just accountability. After the meeting ended, Nathan stayed behind in the empty boardroom. Claire noticed him looking at the same table where they had once discussed their future years earlier. "I used to think losing you was the worst thing that could happen to me," Nathan said quietly. Claire stood near the door. "And now?" He looked down. "Now I think the worst thing was believing I never needed to understand you." Claire did not answer immediately. There was a time when those words would have changed everything. A time when she would have wanted him to finally see her. But that time had passed. "Nathan, people can regret their choices," she said. "But regret does not erase the choices they made." He nodded because he knew she was right. Nathan had spent years chasing success while ignoring the person who stood beside him before anyone knew his name. He had mistaken her patience for weakness. He had mistaken her silence for surrender. And he had only understood her value after he lost the ability to control her place in his life. Several months later, Vantage Horizon Technologies entered a new chapter. Claire accepted a leadership role, not because she wanted to prove anything to Nathan or his family, but because she believed the company deserved honest direction. Employees who had been pushed aside returned. The culture of the company slowly changed. It became less about appearances and more about people. Richard Morgan watched his daughter during her first major company announcement. Afterward, he asked, "Are you happy?" Claire smiled. "I finally feel like I am living my own life." She no longer needed anyone to recognize her worth. She had already discovered it herself. Nathan eventually left the company and started rebuilding his career from the ground up. He was no longer the man everyone admired from a distance. He became someone who understood the cost of ignoring the people who believed in him before success arrived. Years later, when Claire looked back at that divorce paper, she no longer saw the end of a marriage. She saw the moment she stopped asking someone else to choose her. Because sometimes the greatest comeback is not making someone regret losing you. It is becoming someone who no longer needs their approval. And that was the lesson Claire carried forward. Your value does not disappear when someone fails to see it. Sometimes the person who walks away from you is not taking away your future. Sometimes they are simply clearing the path for you to finally find it.